The Michigan Wolverines are 2026 NCAA tournament champions. Let's recap the entire game against UConn and what it means for draft prospects in the 2026 NBA draft.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm your host, Nathan Grubel. Thank you so much for making the #1 podcast network your first listen of the day. Welcome to the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So on today's show, I'm going to do a brief check-in on the Rookie of the Year race. Where do UConn's draft prospects go from here? But first, we have to talk about the 2026 NCAA tournament champion, Michigan Wolverines. Congrats to the Wolverines. They beat UConn in the title game last night, 69-63. Several important draft prospects on the Michigan side that we do need to unpack in the win. So obviously we need to start at the top. One of the main storylines coming into this game was the health of Yaxel Lendenborg. He had an injury. We weren't sure if he was going to start. How many minutes was he going to play? He did start for Michigan, but naturally that injury definitely hampered his performance. The 6'9", 230-pound forward. He only finished with 13 points on 4 of 13 shooting, 2 rebounds, an assist, and a block. So did he fill up the stat sheet across the board in some regards? Yes. And he did give a lot of effort defensively. Really, that Michigan team, they won this game and beat UConn primarily on their defense, not their offense. Gave a lot of effort on that side of the ball, but clearly wasn't himself offensively, wasn't able to finish the best around the basket. He was 0 of 5 from three-point range, which the three-point shot had actually been coming around for him. It's been up and down as the season's gone on, but he increased his volume this season as a three-point shooter by triple the volume of any season he had prior to this at UAB. So really was something new for him to play that small forward position as opposed to a 4 or even the 5 position for a lot of these possessions for Michigan. Really took the initiative to become more of a three-point shooting threat to help the Wolverines spread the floor out. And it really did become a strength of his towards the end of the season. He was north of like 38, 39, 40% from three-point range through the Big Ten tournament, through NCAA tournament play up to this point. Wasn't there for him in the championship game, but he still did give his best effort defensively. And I think it's important to reflect on Yaxel Lendenborg, not necessarily just through the lens of this championship game. Obviously, there were some little plays that he made throughout the game that helped contribute to winning, but really to reflect on Yaxel Lendenborg through the lens of this entire college season. And I understand there's going to be skeptics in terms of drafting him inside of the top 10, given that he's going to be 24 years old before the NBA regular season even tips off in 26, 27. I understand those points. But I think with Yaxel, what we have in this 6'9" forward is someone who can comfortably guard multiple positions on the defensive end of the floor, someone who can go guard your other team's best or second best offensive player, and then provide you so much offensive versatility in terms of his ability to rebound the ball, start the break, initiate that fast break, pass ahead, handle, bring the ball up the floor and transition himself, find different ways to score handling the ball in the half court, set picks, operate as a roll man, operate as a short roll creator, operate in some instances as a post-up threat, spread the floor from three-point range. What can't Yaxel Lendenborg legitimately do on a basketball court? I think is the most important question to ask about his evaluation. He is so unique in terms of just the amount of ground he can cover on both ends, the amount of skill that he provides on both ends of the floor as a defensive playmaker, as a shot deterrer, as someone who can just straight up guard you and wall you off one-on-one. He can create his own shot on offense. He can create shots for others on offense. He did that this entire season at Michigan and was one of the driving forces, if not the driving force, for this team getting to where it was as a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament and capturing that championship. So I wouldn't necessarily let this one last game, this lasting impression, tell the entire story of Yaxel Lenenborg's season, given the injury context that we have to provide. But obviously, we would have loved to see more from him in this championship game. But really the play of the other three players that I'm about to bring up in terms of where they are as draft prospects and what they contributed to this championship run, these three players really told the story of this Michigan win over UConn. Adai Mara obviously did himself some massive favors through this entire NCAA tournament. And even though the 7'3", 240-pound big man didn't necessarily have the craziest game in terms of stats, he had 8 points, 4 rebounds, and assists, 2 turnovers. He did have a steal and a block, and he was 4 of 7 from the field. Even though those stats aren't necessarily popping off the stat sheet in the box score, his impact when you watch back that game was unbelievable. He quite literally, as he has done in a lot of college games this season, changed the geometry of the court on UConn. He shut off a ton of driving lanes for UConn to operate within. We're going to talk about some of their prospects in particular in the second segment, but guys like Terrace Reed, Alex Caravan, forwards and bigs who are comfortable scoring around the basket on a lot of different matchups, depending on what the situation calls for. They didn't even have a lot of those same opportunities to operate, given Mara's presence on the interior, his length, his ability to sort of compose himself on the block defensively, not necessarily fall for a lot of those pump fakes, those shot fakes. He stands his ground, puts both of his arms up in the air. He's such an imposing force. He has improved his strength, his base, his lower body has really improved significantly since he came into college a few years ago and started at UCLA. What Mara was able to do for this team defensively all season, and then obviously on the offensive end, a lot of the buckets that he was able to get. It's not just some of the touch stuff that he's able to show off when he establishes post position, goes over that left shoulder and really gets to create some of those hooks with his right hand. It's the catch lob ability that Mara brings to the table. He just makes, to quote my usual co-host Maxwell Baumbach, he just makes basketball look so easy. You can throw the ball up to him and he's going to catch almost every single lob opportunity that comes his way. He is an awesome offensive rebounder. He obviously cleans the defensive glass. He blocks shots. He deters drivers from even entering the paint and makes them second guess whether they can actually challenge him on shot attempts. You saw all of those things on display last night. And then when he really has his game cooking like he did in Michigan's Final Four matchup against Arizona and earlier games in the tournament, the Big Ten tournament throughout the regular season for Michigan, when he has it cooking from the post as a passer, when defenses actually try to bring a double team to him and pressure him on the ball, when he's able to create looks for others and even show off some of the shooting touch from the mid-range area, or even when he's able to get off a three-point shot, like all of a sudden you just are able to tie these different elements together, and they come from the fact that Mara's game is rooted in the things that I want a big man to be able to do: rebound the basketball, block shots, set good screens, operate as a handoff guy, maybe find some guys in a short roll or double teams in the post off passing opportunities. He's so sound in those particular areas to where now you're comfortable giving him minutes next year on an NBA floor because you know that he's going to provide you everything you want out of a center. You can all of a sudden start to see, well, where else can we maybe evolve his game next? Can we get him more post-up opportunities? Can we get him some more touches around the rim to be able to score and show off some of that finesse with his footwork, his touch on some of those hooks and runners? Can we get him some opportunities maybe in some pick and pop games? Let him start expanding his range out to the three, maybe get him some of those same types of opportunities, fake a handoff, keep the ball, shoot over someone at the nail. Like, can we start to expand his offensive game? And that only happens, I haven't been as obsessed with a lot of big men in this wave of shooting the basketball, or they have to be such awesome threats from three-point range, because a lot of the game for big men is still predicated on what can you provide me as a physical enforcer. And Mara's physical development over these last few years, we saw it blossom perfectly at Michigan. He's transformed himself into a top 10 pick in this 2026 NBA draft. I don't think there's any question about it. I'm going to have him as a top 10 pick on my board. Very confident that No Ceilings is going to reflect the top 10 grade on him in both big boards and mock drafts moving forward. He's been so impressive this season for Michigan. Really love what he's done. And then last night in the game, the two unsung heroes really all season for me, but we've obviously had one of these players ranked pretty highly at no ceilings throughout this entire draft cycle. Morez Johnson Jr. at 6'9", 255 pounds, the power forward for this team. And then Elliot Cadeau, 6'1", 180-pound point guard, had previously transferred from North Carolina. Elliot Cadeau was the star of the show to me last night. 19 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 5 of 11 from the field. He got 9 free throw attempts, was 8 of 9 from the free throw line, and really throughout a bunch of different moments in this tournament, whenever this Michigan team has needed a spark, whenever they needed something to happen from the backcourt, it's been Elliot Cadeau primarily, and then Trey McKinney, another prospect who we're going to be looking at for the 2027 draft as a secondary guy, spark plug off the bench. And you can even point to Roddy Gale Jr., a former Ohio State transfer, with someone who brought a lot of energy, some putback dunks, some key rebounds. But this backcourt hasn't really been discussed at all for Michigan this entire season. And yet I feel like guys like Cadeau and McKinney and Gale really swung several tides for this Michigan team. But I'm also a big fan of Morez Johnson. You know, we've projected him at no ceilings as a potential top 20/lottery level talent. And every single time you watch a Michigan game, you feel his impact. You feel him crashing the offensive glass and getting some key and one opportunities. You see him, fighting on the defensive glass and making sure that certain balls are tied up and go to the possession arrow rather than, another team getting a rebound or creating a different possession. You feel his impact when he's going to the basket, drawing contact, putting another big man in foul trouble and getting some respectable looks at the line. He's another one of these guys who, again, has been much more of a physical enforcer for this Michigan team, but you've seen at times, flashing some passing ability, flashing some shooting ability. There is more to Morez Johnson's game to still be tapped into, but what he's good at right now in terms of, rebounding, physical effort around the basket, and then his defensive versatility, able to step out and legitimately guard other opposing perimeter players one-on-one from the three-point line and in. I mean, that is so valuable for any forward to have in their back pocket. Like Morez Johnson has the defensive versatility like what we've seen from an Isaiah Stewart this year with the Detroit Pistons, someone who has gotten himself in legitimate most improved player and even some all defense level considerations in the NBA this season. I see that level of upside with Morez Johnson Jr. So do not sleep on Morez as a potential lottery pick. That's right. Michigan could have 3 lottery picks in this front court in Yaxel Lenenborg, Adai Mara, and Morez Johnson Jr. Do not sleep on all 3 of those guys to go in the lottery. And then obviously the backcourt next year with Cadeau being a senior, with McKinney coming back for a sophomore season. This Michigan team, this program set up under Dusty May to not just win this year's championship, but win multiple championships moving forward because of how strategic they've been in the portal with some of the recruiting that they've done with bringing in some key freshman components off the bench. This Michigan team set up very well for the future. Do not be surprised if you see them in a potential title game or Final Four next year. So that covers it on the Michigan side. When we return to the Locked On NBA Draft and No Ceilings podcast, we're going to talk about the stock of UConn's draft prospects and what happens with them after the loss this season. Stay tuned. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, so skills, experience, and location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing those candidates who check those boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Way Day is here, and if you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the best time to do it. We're talking about some of the best deals of the year on furniture, decor, and outdoor essentials, everything you need to refresh your home. During Way Day, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. Wayfair is super easy to filter by style, size, and price. I'm not wasting time scrolling around and looking for products that don't fit my current needs. And the reviews and the photos on the website give me all the information I need to make an informed purchase that makes me feel confident in what I'm getting. Whether it's upgrading a room, adding outdoor pieces, or just finding something that ties your space together, it makes the whole process simple from start to finish. Way Day is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off. 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th to the 27th to shop Way Day. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you for making the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast your first listen of the day. All right, we covered the Michigan side of the NCAA championship game last night. Again, Michigan wins 69-63. Have to talk about the UConn prospects. Who really popped? Who still stood out despite the loss? Obviously, three guys in particular do have the chance to go inside the first round of the 2026 NBA draft on the UConn side. That'd be Braylon Mullins, the 6'6", 196-pound wing shooter. That'd be Terrace Reed, the 6'10", 260-pound center. And then Alex Karaban, I think, really did himself the most favors last night, 6'8", 210 pounds. Karaban finished with 17 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Was 5 of 14 from the field, 3 of 10 from three-point range. But if you try and take out some of the efficiency noise from last night's championship game, because in a game like that where it was a physical grudge match, you're not going to get a lot of efficient basketball in terms of shooting from either side, honestly. You didn't really from the Michigan side. Game was won primarily on defense, but UConn still had some great moments in terms of offensive execution where you can just tell a guy like Alex Karaban, who just knows where he needs to be, knows how to move without the basketball, is one of the best relocate, catch and shoot shooters that we've had in college basketball over the last few seasons. Karaban just understands how to play basketball at an enormously high level. Very cerebral, understands his surroundings, has great spatial awareness, knows where to find guys if he needs to move off the ball quickly. It's not just the catch and shoot game with him. If he doesn't have that immediate catch and shoot shot, he doesn't know where to go with the ball next. He plays that strategic hot potato style game. He knows what pass I need to make here, and if that passing window is taken away from me because the double's angled in this direction, I know the next guy I need to hit it to. I can hit that skip. I can hit that cross-court read in the half court. I can grab a rebound, handle the ball a little bit in transition, bring it up the floor if I need to. But his half-court execution, the way that he cuts and dices defenses and relocates and moves without the basketball, he can have a big night on that end of the floor without dominating the ball. And that is key. That is crucial. That's huge for fitting into NBA context, because when a lot of these guys, even first-round picks, even lottery picks to an extent, when they first get up to the NBA level, they're playing with guys who have established themselves as better players than them. So a lot of these guys, even if they have star level potential, unless you're walking in and you're a number one pick from day one, like a Cooper Flagg we're going to talk about a little later, you're just walking into the Dallas Mavericks and you're immediately getting the ball in your hands and you're expected to be the number one option. Most of these guys, if not the vast majority, have to be able to fit in around other players. So even if you might be projecting them down the road as number 1, 2, or number 3 options, you do have to have those complementary skills like shooting the basketball, like cutting, being able to screen for others, knowing where the ball needs to get kicked to next. If it gets kicked to you, you're attacking a closeout, defense comes over to help. You don't have that shot at the rim. Where's the ball going next? You need to have these ancillary skills to be able to provide value for that team. You need to be able to rebound the basketball, guard multiple positions defensively, give effort. Karaban brings all of those elements to the table. He did last night for UConn. If UConn would have been able to pull out that upset, Karaban would have been the biggest reason why. He was so impressive for that team. The other guy that really popped in terms of watching the game back on film is Braylon Mullins. As I mentioned, the 6'6", almost 200-pound wing freshman. 11 points, 4 of 17 from the field, 3 of 10 from three-point range, 1 of 7 from two-point range isn't great, 3 of 10 isn't very efficient from three-point range either. But Mullins really popped as one of these guys who he had 7 rebounds in the box score, but the number of times that he was actually crashing the glass and helping to pop the ball free, keep the ball alive on some of those rebounding opportunities to help someone else get a second chance opportunity for UConn. And then some of the plays in which he was able to crash the defensive glass, come down with those rebounds. That type of effort, that hustle, that athleticism with just how he pops vertically off the floor to seemingly one of the first guys who's able to actually get his hands on the ball. That type of athleticism is really great to see from someone who's primarily known as a three-point shooter. He is not just a catch-and-shoot player. Even though Mullins was a 46% three-point shooter during his senior season in high school and high volume, and he certainly had his up and downs, coming into this season and then throughout the season with Michigan, I think he has established himself as a pretty clutch shooter, given the shot that he made over Duke to send UConn to the Final Four in the first place. But with Michigan, with UConn in particular, what Braylon Mullins was able to provide from a hustle standpoint, an energy standpoint, that's the type of infectious energy that teams need from their glue guys, from their role players. And I could see an NBA team, even though, again, some of the numbers weren't there, he certainly had an up and down tournament, down for the most part, outside of some big moments where he was able to show and provide that value in ways, that memories that everyone's going to be able to look back on and remember fondly. With Mullins, I could see an NBA team talking themselves into, we just want to get this guy in the building. We just want to see, we believe in this player, in this kid. We believe in the type of competitive spirit that he has. And we think that we have a plan in place to be able to develop him moving forward. We think that we can do that for him moving forward. We just want him in our developmental system. We don't want him spending another year in college. Could completely see an NBA team taking that route and doing that. I could also see, for Mullins' development in particular, and him trying to stay in college at UConn for another season to really round out and expand that offensive game, being able to create a little bit more, on the basketball, being able to show a little bit more as a pick and roll player, as a passer, as a playmaker. I think I would prefer Mullins to spend another year in college and get more of those on-ball reps within UConn's system, which is a great offensive system for him to be in because of his on-ball, off-ball, versatility that I do think is there for him as a prospect. We're going to have to see whether he comes out, but I do think if Mullins chooses to come out, I think a team would talk themselves into him, mid to late first round territory. And then Terrace Reed has been mocked, anywhere between the 25 to 40 range, had 13 points, 14 rebounds last night, struggled around the basket against guys like Adai Morrow and Merez Johnson. That size definitely bothered him. Did get to the free throw line 6 times, made 5 free throws. He still found ways to impact the game, though. He's still an awesome defensive player in terms of walling somebody up, boxing out, grabbing rebounds on both ends of the floor. Terrace Reed may not be like a 30 minutes per game starting center in the NBA, but I do think there's a little more that he didn't necessarily get to show last night in terms of, some passing, some handoff stuff, some roll man stuff that he didn't quite get into a lot. But, he had to be a real post-up threat for UConn this entire season. He had to be their go-to post scorer because they didn't have any other bigs around him. And when he's getting all of the attention, at 6'10", 260, he's not a 7-footer. He's not 7'1", 7'2". He can't just go over and score over anyone, especially not being the most, vertical center in the game. But Terrace Reed is someone who's smart. He's sturdy. He's always going to find ways to impact the game. And if you can get someone like that who can be your 7th, 8th, 9th man off your bench, and you're very confident that that's the player he's going to be with some spot starter level upside down the road, you grab that player late in the first round. You grab that guy in the 25 all the way out to the 40 range in the early part of the second round, because you can take a swing on a project. But if you whiff on that pick versus grabbing someone like Terrace Reed, who's plug and play, you understand that you can keep him around for quite a while, and he's great value in terms of the contract that he's on, being a reliable bench contributor as a second or third big. I would much rather take that player than take a swing on another project who could potentially be in the same range. So I think Terrace Reed, we're pretty confident in no ceilings, having him as a late first round grade on him. That 25 to 40 range, would look out for that with Terrace Reed in particular. When we come back to the Locked On NBA Draft on No Ceilings podcast, I'm going to wrap up the show by doing a quick NBA Rookie of the Year check-in, because there's a lot of debate flying around between Cooper Flagg of the Dallas Mavericks and Con Knipple of the Charlotte Hornets. Stay tuned. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. And that's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. The Philadelphia 76ers are in the midst of a race for the 6th or the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And with one home game left on the season, I had to pull open the Gametime app to score some seats to see the Philadelphia against Milwaukee Bucks. Using the app is super simple. Clicking on the game I want tickets for takes me to an incredible seat map that has all of the best zone deals highlighted, so I don't have to waste time looking at every single section. 2 tickets, few rows off the floor, less than $100 a piece spotted in 5 seconds. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. All right, welcome back to the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast. Had to wrap up this show by doing a very quick Rookie of the Year check-in. It has been a contested debate between Cooper Flagg of the Dallas Mavericks and Con Knippel of the Charlotte Hornets. For the past few months, the odds have been in Con Knippel's favor, the betting odds in terms of who will win Rookie of the Year. You know, Tim Bontemps at ESPN did his annual straw poll with the rest of the Hoop Collective podcast last week, and they added in a specific section, not just for MVP, but also Rookie of the Year. He polled 100 different anonymous sources about who they would put to win Rookie of the Year, and Con Knippel had a landslide share of the first place votes. Not necessarily surprised with that in the slightest, but over this past weekend, Cooper Flagg scored 95 points in Dallas's last 2 games. Cooper Flagg on the season leads the Dallas Mavericks in total minutes played, points, rebounds, assists, and steals, and he's second only to Daniel Gafford in total blocks. So Cooper Flagg came into this year, his rookie season, got off to a little bit of a rocky start, but did establish himself as the legitimate number 1 option moving forward that everyone thought he would be at coming out of the 2025 NBA draft. He was the number 1 overall pick for a reason, but Con Knippel for the Charlotte Hornets has been so efficient and consistent across the board on the year. You know, Cooper's averaging 21, almost 7, and almost 5. He's one of the first rookies to do that in a long time on 47% shooting from the field, 29.7% from 3, 82 from the line. Con Knippel's averaging almost 19 points per game, 5 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 48% from the field, 43% from 3, 86% from the free throw line. I wanted to just pull up some contact stats because when a lot of people are talking about Cooper Flagg versus Con Knippel, it's about, well, Con's had all of this awesome help with the Charlotte Hornets, with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, and that is true. When those 3 guys are all on the floor together, they are blowing the doors off of everyone. Their offensive rating is through the roof. They're plus 19.8 points per 100 possessions with an offensive rating of 133.6. We understand that. So Cooper hasn't had as much help. Cooper's had to do more. He has been the primary on-ball guy. Con Knippel's just a 3-point shooter in a secondary or tertiary role. He's not getting the same opportunities as Cooper Flagg. He's not asked to be that guy. That couldn't be further from the truth, though, about Con Knippel. Here's the thing with Con, right? Con Knippel, without Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball on the floor, all of these stats are per cleaning the glass. The Hornets are plus 4 points per 100 possessions out of 1,570 possessions this season. So not a small sample size in the slightest. The Charlotte Hornets have been a positive basketball team by net rating with Con Knippel on the floor, Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball off the floor. Now, Cooper Flagg hasn't necessarily had other star players to lean on this season outside of when Anthony Davis did play some minutes. So larger share of opportunities, Cooper Flagg without Anthony Davis on the floor. The Dallas Mavericks are minus 5.9 points per 100 possessions. So already you can see, you know, outside of just looking at the 2 teams' records, you know, Dallas Mavericks are in the tank race. The Hornets are trying to be a legitimate seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Outside of just looking at their raw records, you can already see the impact that Con's having, you know, with those 2 guys, Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, and even without them. So let's take it a step further, right? So, a lot's been talked about. Con Knippel's role is primarily just as an off-ball shooter. Well, Con Knippel, with both Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball on the floor, pick and roll possessions as a ball handler, 0.98 points per possession, which is a great mark for someone who's not known as an on-ball dominant point guard. As the roller in those possessions, so Con Knippel being used as a ghost screener or a slip screener, someone who is catching the ball in the short roller, popping back out and getting it from three-point range. 1.39 points per possessions as a roller and 1.06 point per possession, including passes. Let's take a look at the numbers without those two guys on the floor. So you would expect that if Con Knippel doesn't have the same offensive options around him in terms of Ball and Miller, that when he tried to run some of those same play types, he would struggle a little bit. Con without Miller and Ball on the floor, pick and roll scoring as a ball handler, 1.03 points per possession. As a roller, 1.35 points per possession. Slight dip there. And 1.1 points per possession, including passes. So without those two guys on the floor, Con Knippel has still been successful as a ball handler. That checks out with the net rating stats that I just gave you. It checks out in terms of how he's able to manipulate different ball screens, how composed he is as a dribbler in the half court, how sound he is in terms of how he utilizes his body to create different angles. He's been efficient at the basket. He's been efficient from the mid-range. He's been highly efficient from three-point range. He's one of the top three-point shooters this season across all of the NBA. He's set the record for most three-pointers made by a rookie. And then what's even crazier about Con's level of efficiency and consistency and success. Con has played 78 games. He's had 29 games where he's shot under 45%. So 37% of his games, he's shot under 45% from the field. Cooper Flagg has played in 66 games. 27 of his games, he's shot under 45% from the field. Con Knippel's shot diet, 71% of his attempts per Synergy Sports this year are off of jumpers. Cooper Flagg has only taken 44% of his shots as jump shots. So Con Knippel has been more efficient with a more difficult shot diet. And again, we can come back to the team stats. We can say, well, Con's had better players. Has Con had better players? The Hornets with Con, LaMelo, and Brandon Miller off the court are minus 12 points per 100 possessions. The Mavericks with Cooper and Anthony Davis off the court are minus 5.9 points per 100 possessions. So listen, Cooper Flagg has been dominant these last few weeks. He's been incredible for about 7 or 8 games now. And he's been really good this entire season. If anyone wants to vote Cooper Flagg for Rookie of the Year, I don't blame them. I was almost swayed to do the same off of what I watched Cooper do on tape these last 2 games. But the resume for Con Knippel goes far beyond him just being a stationary or a movement shooter. What Con's done as a complete offensive threat, as a ball handler, as a passer, regardless of who he's had on the floor with him, driving, winning, and ultimately being one of the key contributors to what Charlotte has done this season, I'm going to vote Con Knippel for Rookie of the Year. I'm voting him for Rookie of the Year. He's going to be in my Rookie of the Year and all-rookie column that will be published next week on NoCeilingsNBA.com. Con Knippel is my Rookie of the Year because no matter what way I try and slice the data, no matter what way I try and evaluate and look at different things on film and analyze all the different play types he's been used in, whether it's, spot up shots or in transition or handoffs or as a screener, as a roller, like no matter what Con Knippel has done for this Hornets team, he's been efficient in every single way possible. That's my NBA Rookie of the Year. That's my quick check-in. That's going to do it for today's show, though. So thank you for tuning in to today's Locked On NBA Draft and No Ceilings podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow at No Ceilings NBA on social media to make sure that you're locked in for all of our latest content and episodes. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.